Ryu. All right, what we got here. So I got my chat up. Everything is up. Uh, Let me resituate a little bit here. Get a bit comfortable. All right, so feeling a lot of momentum here. This day number 63, and if we just get through 7 pages today, we will be at our goal of 10 pages per day edited. And if we can continue that pace or even exceed it, we will be done with this novel before the end of February. God damn.
I don't understand. We
I
will
know.
be done with his novel before the end of February. But I could search the web for it.
Suck a dick, Siri. That's a dumb broad. Fucking blogging on us. So apparently Stratum only has eyes for Kaysan Soleimani. Seems like your eyes might be a bit of a waste there. You know what I'm saying? You might want to find some greener pastures to gaze upon. Good God. Oh shit, Beans is linking to Ramirez right there. He's got some wild raps. I've got that fucking new Lily Allen song stuck in my head. I'm going to play it on the show this week. It's so you guys can suffer as I've suffered. I know Raborn is a big Lily Allen fan. But it's just about her doing cocaine and waking up with strangers. So we get to chapter 82. We're doing pretty solid there. I think we had the whole fucking... God, how many chapters was that? Let's find... So, yeah, so chapters 71 through 82. Not 83. We're not quite there yet. Well, we might get there. So chapters 71 through 82, like 11 straight chapters of just this diversion to the Rabbit Hill Inn. And it really makes me wonder, like, what if we just cut that whole piece out of the story? What would we lose? So we'd lose them meeting the Waltzes. We'd lose sort of their first time as lovers. And we'd lose the scene of them reconciling. We'd lose that scene where we find out that Freya's like a little bit starting to see things, and like she thinks other people think that she's like a witch or something like that for having this strange situation. And we'd lose a Garbuglio chapter. So yeah, that's been our focus for the last 10 or 11 days. That segment of the book right there, and it's kind of a happy segment for the most part. I mean, the characters get what they want. They draw closer. There's some weirdness. It's like nuanced. It's not like they're just fucking everything is happy. And they're deeper into the spiral. So yeah, if we want to, I think let's just structurally take a look at the book real quick. I'm doing this because we're let's Seiko Motel. Let's just go to Control G 1. So we got our old epigraph here. So chapter 0. So this is the part at Grayson High School, part 1. And let's take a look here. Oh, cool. I could have just done. All right. So part 1 in the story is essentially the fight that goes on at our high school. So that happens until, and then she's reminiscing about all the girls that she's hung out with. Okay, so from chapter 1 to chapter 5, actually like a little bit later here, So let's if we may. When I was young, I was blind. Oh, cool. There's no personally identifying info in these notes. That's good. Okay. So chapters 1 through 5 is she's bullied at her school, and she. So chapters 1 through 5, she's bullied at school. She attempts suicide, and then discovers the star ball. In chapter 6, she does some recon on the star ball. Has to bail her mother out of jail. Starball is letting us know it's out there. We out here. We talk about her drama, reminiscing about their intro, Lynn Harris. So, they throw a rock at her through the taco time window. And does she get enough to eat? Blah, 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 blah. So chapter 11 is named as, oh, guess what? It's time to write. So, yeah, chapter 11. When I was young, I was blameless. Okay. So this is, I guess, chapter. So meeting the psychiatrist is like a big thing. Unless I would make her. And they Starball starts to okay. So in chapters 6 through let's say, because there's an arc in here somewhere. Okay, so 6 through 15 are kind of like set up. So and then we introduce and I don't think that Tammy Dowd makes another play anywhere else in the book. Uh, and so in chapters 6 through 15, that's where we get the introduction to Vitko, where we're accelerating the bullying with the taco time incident. And that's just me like trying to clarify the time a little bit. At some point, I'll have to go through and write a chapter by chapter. Fucking. Did I try Macdown? Got a call to attend. No, I didn't give it a shot. I probably should there. But McDoon. No. Let me just cover some of these advertisements while we're out here. Okay. I mean, I could be keeping these comments within this thing if I were smart. So can't just surrender. All right, so this is her whining about how our school sucks. So Freya investigates the star ball. She meets. I don't think that. What's the name of this girl? Claire is a important enough character to do anything. Okay, so this is a new scene that we added here, where so 15 through, and so let's see. So that's the bullying thing. Starball. There we go. So let's say, actually, chapter 21 is where 15 through 20. Okay, so chapter 21 is sleepwalking a ledge. Okay, so we introduce Radomir. Massive insomnia, more dreams. Oh, that's like a heartbreaking scene, like her letter to her friend that she deletes. That one was. I caught the feels for that one. I gotta tell you. And then, so what do we have here? So we introduce Radomir there. So I think one of the things that might be useful is I think around chapter 15, I think the title for 15 is Playing Better. And yeah, so 15 is a slight improvement arc, but then it crashes to a halt. Chapter 23. All right, so let's take a look at how this is going. So the arc here is just straight down. So that's just the way that story moves is just like just flat down. Everything is just getting worse here. So 6:15, and then 15 to 20. Situation begins to worsen. So the situation plunges dramatically. So really, like we've started at a relatively low point here, get lower, um, then we drop a little bit more. There's like a tiny blip of like chapter 15. It's like, oh, I'm playing better. I'm pretending that I'm okay. Um, and then around chapter 21, we're just in free fall into like a chasm there, where especially where not sleeping is like a huge issue. Uh, Increasingly weird dreams and isolation. Sleeplessness. Okay. Yeah, I really like. I like also the choice of that like girly font there. Um, so the weird dream. Okay, so chapter 27 is where that end. Then in chapter 27, so that's where she starts running regularly. There's a dramatic improvement in her sleep. Stops taking the Lunesta. Starts relating more to Dr. Garbuglio, which is a good one. I really think that's probably one of the better Dr. Garbuglio chapters, where he just has like that black eye and gets pop. And then so in one of these chapters, Lassa departs. So actually, the blow up with her mother was something that should have that happened in chapter 20. Okay. Yeah. So Lassa returns and reconciles. Um, and at some point in this chapter, I think their shit gets spray painted. The air in Lassa's room. New day. Cool. Okay, so yeah, this is the day where everything changes. So 27 through 30 is where we start to see like a little peak in improvement. So chapter 31. Okay. Uh, so yeah, I can't remember the name of Lynn Harris's sister. Lee Harris. So there's a library scene. So we introduce Lee Harris in that scene. I don't think she's actually important enough to merit an inclusion in an outline like this, but I do like the Lee Harris character. Um, so we. So chapter 30, things start to get better. There's a fight with Malcolm, uh, where she and Dan start to get close, and that goes on until yeah, it's a big long ass party scene. Oh shit. So something changed because our numbering is out of frame. So let's figure out where we fuck something up. Okay, so I think it's just chapter 38. Looks good. And then a change that we made without thinking about it fucked up our. We always want to have a new chapter start on a new page. That's just like a very typical thing for manuscripts. And okay, cool. So that we just had to make that change there. So yeah, so chapters 31 through 40 are really all just one big Sunday. Which it's weird to have MMA on a Sunday, but from time to time they've done it. You know, it's like I don't think we say that it's UFC branded, but I can't see these kids fucking watching Bellator or whatever there. So that is a really big Sunday where just her whole life changes around dramatically. That's where she makes a bunch of new friends. That's something where, like 10 years later, she would look back and be like, "That was a pivotal day in my life." You know, what if, like if she hadn't gotten out of her house, there, like none of this shit might have ever happened. So that's kind of interesting. So 41 is where our that's actually 39. So those 8 chapters are like one big long. I really like that part of the book is one of my favorite right there. I like the scene with all. I like them leveling with each other. I like the scene with all the kids, like Dan, like running around the house, fucking being chased by Claire after he called her a cow. Actually called Freya a cow, and then he called Claire a. She just he heavily implied she needed to lose about 30 pounds, and she fucking chased him around the house. That was a solid one right there. Um, so chapter 40 is where it starts getting really weird. So that's where we have these feelings of hypersexuality. Uh, let's see. Where she's just drained. Oh, yeah, yeah. So, really important here. So they say, could she lose 30 pounds? My vision in her head, well, Freya can't lose. She would just die. 30 pounds would put her at like 70 pounds, and she would be dead. Claire, on the other hand, who you may remember is the girl who was interested in Jane Yang and got like weirdly bitchy about the whole thing and bully. Claire is on the lacrosse team. She could lose 30 pounds and probably still a little bit more, honestly. And we only know through that little line of the thing. But Claire, yeah, Claire's a brick shit house. Uh, so what do we have there? Yeah, so yeah, actually, this is kind of an important thing there. God damn it, where are you, notes? Okay, so chapter 40. So there's a confrontation with yeah, Radomir and Freya. everybody watching her. Breakdown in math class. Okay, so that's a high rising situation improvement. Yeah, so in chapter 27, we start to see this character arc, and then huge pit right here. It's just a massive decline in Freya's fortunes in chapter 40 through makes an omelet. So chapter 45 is like a point of light in the whole situation here. So um, this is where he gives her the tickets to the show in Bangor, which is like a big improvement for her. So 45 is playing better. And more running there. And yeah, so the texting relationship with Dan starts up. Drinking all the Ensure. Okay. So, and actually, like in this instance, in chapter 49, where her so chapter 45 is like where her tires get, or 49 is where her tires get slashed. And her response to it, I like the response to it, where she's just more angry than whatever. Uh, uh, so Radomir gets beaten and put into the hospital. Then it's like a stirring Bitco speech. Oh, so here is the so there's a group scene at Pizza Place. So Dan handles the star ball and he's stuck. Where she feels kind of shitty about herself. Chapter 51, that happens. And all right, there we go. So chapter 45 through 51. All right, so 52. That's where Dan. Freya and Dan dream of sharing one body. That's where she learns that he's or Dan is Dr. Garbaglio's patient as well. And they visit Radomir in the hospital. Okay. Freya's garage is vandalized. And this is really like the first Unity scene here in chapter 55. So we make it more than halfway through this book before they get to the first Unity scene. And then the second Unity scene happens shortly afterward in chapter 56. All right, so chapter 52 through 57. Okay, so fact check. The passage of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act of 1996 welfare was limited to the 5-year lifetime limit. So Scratch says, toss a coin to your witcher. I didn't see that show. So yeah, I sort of played the game, but I got bored with it, honestly. Like I got maybe like an hour. What I put in? Like maybe like 7 or 8 hours. And then I just didn't find it like super fucking compelling. I just found the combat like really boring. It's like I could just beat everybody. It was like, there's nothing. So so Dan has a panic attack there. Yeah, so those are interesting fucking scenes right there. So what's our arc right here? Huge decline. So the situation remains fairly neutral there. I don't think things improve or decline for them. Yeah, I love seeing like the character. I can like in my mind now I can like almost plot a graph of how well these people are doing. So Logic said dads are like boomerangs. They come back. I hope. I think the like yearbook quote was like dads are like boomerangs. I hope. The comeback part was unspoken, and I think for that to succeed as a joke, you have to leave out the they come back part. Dads are like boomerangs. I hope, because it like the part of the joke is the reader, the listener, like filling in that segment that's missing, like because I guess like a big part of comedy is like something initially doesn't make sense, and then the punchline makes it make sense, and there's that aha moment. Oh, like that's funny. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why removing those 3 words makes it a stronger joke. Dads are like boomerangs. I hope. And now it doesn't work because like obviously like we've already reached the conclusion in our minds. But yeah, just like I don't know, y'all. Like all this comedy theory and everything aside, I have been wondering if at some point I should try and do stand up. Oh, so omit page 404 in the arc. It's a stratum note right there. I'm gonna do that absolutely. So chapter 58. What's happening there? They get closer. They go for a run. There's a really strong unity scene there. This is where we really start to give ourselves a lot of license to get into the telepathy aspect of this book. So yeah, the scene where, all right, so um so a little bit like one thing that's important here. What do we have here? We have Guilty Country who says good morning all. Yeah, I don't know. I vaguely remember Guilty Country, but I don't know exactly who that is if I know you from somewhere else. But yeah, we're so right now we're just doing like a quick summary of the plotting of this story so far. This is like their 60-second day. We're gonna actually edit a chapter here in a second, but I just realized that it was about time to I want to get an idea of how the dramatic arcs are working here, and we can see that we don't follow like a clear dramatic arc. It's not like rising tension, climax done, um, which is something that like structurally we may want to look at, um, so that we don't so that readers don't get bored. You know what I mean? But also it's incredibly difficult to fix at this point. Um, I feel like we do have an escalation of stakes throughout the story. So when we're talking about like our map here, we're not talking about the stakes of what's at hand. We're talking about how good things are going for our protagonist. So her personal thing, um, just her like situation fluctuates, but really probably what I should be talking about is the stakes and the dramatic tension, if any, to be found here. And I think is like probably in hindsight, looking back at this, we can see that we don't have a tremendous amount of dramatic tension in this. This is not anything close to like a thriller. Hold on, I gotta look at this. Nance made an ASCII for "I am a heron," but the heron's legs are like a 4. That's wild. Okay, so more about the starball here. And yeah, she really kind of bullies him into not telling anybody here. She definitely um, puts it out. All right, so chapter 61, 60. That's like a whole important arc there. So 61, where she has like this dark vision of death. They recognize that Lassa's improprieties at Heidenkernu. Okay, so yeah, slight decline in her fortunes there. So that's where this is a little bit of an escalation right here, where Lassa is in trouble. She gets to see Dan again, and they take a trip to Yeah. Okay, so they have an amazing experience at this concert together. No more struggling. Yeah. All right, so 68. She starts having another weird dream. So 68 is like a continuation because they're close again. So that's Karhu. Okay, and then 70 is like the China House buffet scene. All right, cool. Their relationship deepens, and then okay, so that's an important note. Like while we're going through here, I'm gonna go back and put a note on where she reveals that so I'd like to include a line in here where uh, oh, here. Like, so that was actually good. So am I taking sponsors? Um, how much to rename Doctor to Noseberg or Nosenstein? I'll do it for 10 grand, which is like the price of getting this edited and proofread individually. Because if I change this to Dr. Nosenstein, I will indeed be having to pay for a professional editor and proofreader myself because no publisher will ever fucking touch it. I mean, they would just change. You realize, like, I could change him to Dr. Nosenstein, right? And just have him constantly be doing like, this thing, and just have a fucking mezuzah at the entrance to his office and all these other tropes. But if I were ever to try and get this published, the publisher would just quietly be like, hey, we need to have a talk about Dr. Nosenstein. And they would put their foot down and they would refuse to publish it with that character in there, which is just how it would go down. And of course, I would capitulate because I need their fucking money. And I can't promote this fucking thing myself. Look at my audience. I have like 8 people watching this, right? Like, if all 8 people buy a book, congratulations. I just made $24. We need a slightly larger economy of scale. Also, I have to tell you that Dr. Vincente Garbuglio is like a little bit more compelling and interesting than Dr. Shlomo Nosenstein or whatever super stereotypical Jewish thing we want to put into there. It's just not a good candidate for racist-defying the book. I mean, the core premise of the book is deeply examining how people are different and yet still very much the same in like their innermost workings right there. So you can see where it doesn't make it a good tool for, I guess, whatever Aryan propaganda you're trying to put together. But that said, I'm still happy to take your $10,000 and I'll just put a foreword in the book just saying, hey, I had to rename this character to Dr. Nosenstein to get $10,000. The original name was X. Done. But I don't anticipate that I will receive $10,000. But anyhow. Okay. So far, Malcolm has thrown a rock at me through a window, slashed my tires, and spray painted my garage. Seems like a really reasonable response to me breaking up with him. Mm. What a winner. So besides ambushing Rad, Malcolm has thrown a rock at me through a window, slashed my tires, and spray painted my garage. Now he's sending me death threats. What a winner. Is that a real gun? Okay, cool. people in the channel are doing like a fucking Facebook message forwarding campaign to each other. It's idiotic. All right, what do we have here? I want so Radomir doesn't say anything here. So how's the writing? So actually, we haven't really started editing today. We're doing kind of a quick summary of all the chapters and like the dramatic arc thus far. And Radomir looked like he was going to throw up. Okay, so yeah, Radomir doesn't really say anything. Okay, yeah, then he gets into there. I think just him looking like he was going to throw up is a pretty decent one. I mean, this is a guy that has put him in the fucking hospital, knocked him out of 2 months of ballet practice. And yeah, like I would tell you, like if you ever have an act of violence perpetuated against you like that, especially like a big head injury or something, it very much changes your view of the world. We talk about that a little bit, where after she gets like pounced on in school, Freya's like constantly afraid that somebody's going to pop up out of an alley and attack her or whatever. So our page goal is 10 pages per day of editing, and we want to finish editing by let me see, what chapter were we at? Cool. Yeah, we want to. So if we get 10 pages a day, what are we at? We're at day 63 right now. We're editing around. Today we're going to get to page 630. Which means that if we keep that up, simple arithmetic means that so 17 more days we might potentially be done with this whole thing. Everybody's in on the all say shit. God, that's awful. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. So death threat from Malcolm. Extent of stalking is revealed to friend group. So it's actually a 4-hour drive from the spot in the story where we take this off. I am going to when it gets warm, I'm going to drive my motorcycle to the Rabbit Hill Inn here. I'm going to spend the night there. And then I'm going to drive around in Maine and see all the things that I fucked up. Like, I should have done this before we wrote like an entire novel set there. But maybe we'll find like a few spaces to improve the whole situation. Okay, so all right, yeah, and that's where we made this change here. I hope I will be able to reach 1,000 pages. We will never, ever, this book will never be 1,000 pages. So right now, the total, keep in mind, we're editing this. We're not adding more to the story outside of filling in the blanks. So what we're trying to do here, like, honestly, I had hoped that we would trim this down to about 600 pages. Like part of what we're doing now, so 71 is where they decide to make their break for it. All right, so chapter 71. So let's go here. too. Uh, I shall change my drafts into a novel like how I'm writing it. I've inspired you to write a true novel. Well, that's amazing. If I can give a little advice on the writing of a true novel, if you've never written a novel before, please, please, please shoot for about 50,000 words. And I'll tell you this, it's always easier to add more than to take away what you have, especially when the structure is poor. Um, for like a first time person, I definitely think it's like very useful to outline where you want to go in the story, and but to also don't feel like you have to be stick to your outline. Right, an outline is just that. It's like a sketch. You can put in new lines anytime that you want to. Um, yeah, it's really good to set a goal for about how much you want to have today or per day, but also to ignore that goal completely if you just don't have it in you. Like if you feel like you don't have the magic a specific day, go back and edit a chapter. Maybe the magic will pop up. Maybe it won't. All right. I'm a big fan of editing as you write. Normally, before I start writing, I'll go back to the previous chapter, edit it, and that'll put me into the frame of mind to continue working. But also keep in mind that and editing and writing are like two completely separate things, right? They occupy two completely different spaces in your brain, and they can't happen simultaneously, which is one of the reasons why very, very few really good editors are also really good writers, because editors are too concerned with having something good, and writers have to take big risks, right? They have to try to fly and fail miserably, and it's a lot of the editor's work to try and keep them airborne again. And I truly believe some people will say that this is horseshit, but this has been my experience. And I think if you look if you look at the writing of people who are professional editors, you will see that there's something there. That only applies to fiction writing, by the way. It has nothing whatsoever to do with nonfiction writing, where I think editors have like a solid edge. But still like it's just two different professions for a strong reason. Um, so let me see. How do I deal with writer's block in general? I never really get it. And I'll tell you why. One, because like my writing practice is every single day we go and write. And if you do something every single day and expect yourself to have a certain output, you will get to a point where there's very few times where you're just like, I don't really feel like I can fucking do this. A big part of avoiding it is like I like to write as the very first thing that I do during a day, so that my mind is not cluttered with other bullshit. Really, just everything else in your life will intrude on writing, and that's why I found it very effective to like not go on like Facebook or Reddit or whatever before I go and write. Just having that be the first thing that I do each day, and to me, it's the most important thing. So I get that out of the way, and then whatever other bullshit happens during the day, it doesn't matter because the writing is done, which was my goal for the day in any case. So another thing that's super helpful is usually I have like 3 or 4 different writing projects that I'll be working on simultaneously. And I'll only really fixate on one when we're close to the end of it. And I just need to work on it to the exclusion of stuff. Like we can look at GRAVID right here. Like the idea of spending 100 days on just one work is actually quite difficult for me. but it's important that we finish this. And keep in mind, it's like more than 100 days. Really, for about like the last year, this has been my primary focus. And actually, when I finished editing or finished writing the novel, I actually took a month and just wrote a short story about called Space Tards, just because I wanted to write something really stupid where I could just have fun after working on this like big, serious whatever. So anyhow, my tips there are: one, please, 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 if you've never written a novel before, write a short novel, right? And I'll tell you why, because your first novel is not going to be good. It's going to be good to you, right? And it's going to be good maybe to like your mom, but to the vast majority of people, you will probably have a difficult time getting your first novel published because the quality won't be there, because it's very much something where you have to learn. And keep in mind, I'm only talking about like somebody trying to figure this shit out themselves. If you took a class on how to write a novel and like have like an English degree or something like that, I don't know, maybe you can do a good job with your first novel. But I haven't seen it. Very few first debut novels are any good whatsoever, and they're usually serious flaws and some heavy, heavy lifting that's been done by an editor to sort that shit out. So by keeping it to 50,000 words, I think I can write a 50,000 word novel in about 6 months, right? Pretty handily. And even if you're writing every day, you should be able to, within about 6 months, get like a very competent first draft. So anyhow, yeah, all this shit is entirely possible. And you can see like how day by day by day, I've been doing this every single day. Literally all it takes, just doing it every day, focusing, not allowing yourself to make excuses. There have been days where I've honestly like come into this editing like so fucking hungover that I was almost green, and just still did it anyway. Like, really, if you don't accept excuses from yourself and doing the thing that you really want, failure is not an option. You have to succeed, not commercially, but succeed in putting out something that you will like. All right, so let me take a look at some of these other comments. What if you write descriptive words around the picture to help yourself get creative with the story? It's been a long time since I've needed to do like any kind of brainstorming or anything, just because usually all that, like when I fall asleep at night, I'm envisioning ideas for stories. And anytime like somebody isn't bothering me and I just have some time to think, or I'm on a long drive, or I'm on the subway or something like that, I'm thinking up ideas for stories, things that I want to write. Like it really is constantly running in the background of my mind, like trying to come up with ideas for these things. Because keep in mind, like I love doing this, right? I love all this like visualization and coming up with these concepts and everything. It really is. I don't know at what point this happened, where writing just became like by far the most important thing to me. Like most people know me for my radio show, or some people know me for like weird paintings and so forth. And I have like a job and I have like a circle of friends and I run a board game club, but like ultimately, like none of that shit really matters. I might be more remembered for the radio show when everything is said and done, but none of that's really important. And what is really important to me is the writing, constantly. All right, what do we have here? I got a black small notepad. Will that help me brainstorm my ideas? Honestly, in this stage, like I've done that a million times. I've like bought special pens and bought special, like try to keep notebooks and everything. And I've never really had much success with it, but like organizationally, I'm not a strong organizer. Mostly what I'll do is like, you can see here, like a bunch of notes, where in my iCloud, I've just got like a bunch of story ideas and errors and aliens, and like some rap lyrics, story about the difficulty, the chart story. So you can see where I just keep a bunch of notes for myself on my phone. And honestly, like you can lose a phone, you can lose a notebook, but you're not going to lose your iCloud unless people hack it and release all your nudes to the media. Which, by the way, like if you want to see the biggest hard-on the face of planet Earth, hack my iCloud. You can't do it, nerds. Anyhow, let's get back to mapping out the story. But yeah, like by the way, I'm always happy to, if you're a viewer of this stream and you're helping me out by like viewing this and giving your comments and so forth, that goes two ways. I'm happy to take a look at your stuff and try to give you places where you can improve. Please note, that I am like a very demanding person when it comes to writing, and my feedback may not be pleasant. Like if I think you should just stop, I'll tell you like exactly where I think you're at, and it may not be something that you're ready to hear. Also, if I give somebody bad feedback, it's probably they didn't prepare hard enough before they showed their work to others, right? And also, it's a completely different feedback if you're like 17 years old and just starting on this whole thing, whereas if you're like in your mid 40s and just starting off, time to fucking give up if you're not good. Like if you're 40 and trying to take a crack at this, you have 20 years to go. You know what I mean? Like, so the best time to start getting better is right fucking now, because literally like at least 20 years before I felt even sort of competent at doing this. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I'm not even that great at it, honestly. Like I'm not fucking stellar. I'm not a genius or anything. But yeah, I'm fucking I'm trying, you know what I mean? It's important to me. Okay, so 71 through we talked about like 78, I think. So we don't I can just fill out the rest of this myself here. So all right, so extent to what they're going different. Oh yeah, that's their first sexual encounters. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that brings us all the way here to chapter 83. All right, so let's just look over the different important segments of what's happening here. So in chapters 1 through 3, we meet Freya Jokla. She's bullied at her school, and she attempts her suicide in chapter 5 and discovers the Star Ball, sort of like an alien probe, where she's not 100% what's what and who's who. Tactile incident. It's a taco time incident. So from chapters 6 to 15, we're really starting to do some development work on our story right here. This is where we're introducing characters like Dan, Lynn Harris, Dr. Garboglio, and Vitko. So we can see like this is where external forces are trying to build our protagonist up here. And let's see. So from chapters 15 through 20, we start to escalate a little bit. Freya, like the results of meeting all these new people and doing all these new things, her situation begins to improve. The bullying is escalating. In chapter 21, that's where she gets into a deep downward spiral. This is where Freya makes the first choice to try and exist without this star ball that has become her constant companion, because she's starting to worry about the effect that it's having on her. So she tries to seal it up in her locker, and everything gets so much worse. Finally, she just surrenders. And so, yeah, that's where her situation gets a lot worse. So in chapter 27, things begin to improve, and it's more because of choices that our character is making. Like she chooses to actually go and try and run, and then she chooses to not just sit at home, but like, hey, I'm going to go to the library and stop at a diner and so forth. And she has a chance encounter with Dan Gregulis that changes everything, right? He invites her over to hang out with everybody. And this is where she finds out like more about her father at the library. And then she gets into this big thing where the sort of the tension with Malcolm Lewis comes to a head. He is kind of laughed out of this party. and Freya cements herself as part of this friend group. It's a big, big change there. So chapter 44 is where we see like the drama start to increase a lot. Where no, I'm sorry. So the first attempt to seal the star ball away, where she starts getting worried about it, is after Dan gets jabbed. And this is where we have like the first scenes of like hypersexuality breakthrough in her practicing. This is where she gets into a fight with Jane and Radomir, and there's a breakdown in her trigonometry class. So this is like things are plunging here. She tries to make it without the star ball, and she's just not ready. So in chapters 45 through 51, she shows improvement in her music. She is invited to a show in Bangor. Her relationship with Dan is improving. They're like texting each other and so forth. And some weirdness is happening with the star ball, but then she finds out that her tires got slashed by Malcolm Lewis. But rather than like dismaying her, her resolve is increased. She is not going to let some creepy fucking stalker ruin her life. I see a big wall of text there. I'm going to get to that at the end of this thing here. So let's see. Radomir is beaten up and put into the hospital, and this also draws the friend group closer together, where they are all. Yeah, it's just a lot of this is how this external force serves to bring Freya and these friends closer together, which I like. So in 52 for 57, they some of their relationships continue to improve, and this is where the beginning of unity, which is where she and her love interest, their minds are interlinked, and they're sharing each other's thoughts and sensations and feelings. So 58 through 60 is where sort of the unity first comes to a head, and Dan wants out, or he wants to tell somebody about it, and she sort of bullies him into not telling anybody. And this is a scene where you really start to see a little bit of the dark side of the Freya character. It's very interesting to me. And then 61 through 67 is where we start to see that there is trouble brewing. The star ball has not simply been content to hang out in her pocket. It's fucking with computer systems all over the place. There is a weird process running on everybody's cell phones. And Freya and Dan decide to go to a concert, and their relationship deepens. So it's a big improvement in her romantic life, but everything else is kind of fucking up. So in 68 through 67, she reveals to her friends the extent to which this dude is stalking her, and is advised to get the fuck out of town. So in 71 through 82, Freya and Dan are driving to Vermont, and this is like a big, long romance scene. And I think this is sort of the apex of a lot of their romance, is like these two young kids like falling in love, losing their virginity to each other theoretically. I don't know. Like, I guess we write the Dan character as a virgin more or less, and starting to deal with like this whole new part of their lives. And now we're into chapter 83. So that's what's happened so far. Let's see. I appreciate the explanations you give. Great teacher to learn from. I know my grammar isn't all that great, but editing will help me through that, and reading aloud helps me to perfect it. It gets being able to, yeah, it's going to be a huge obstacle for you. Okay, so yeah, like keep in mind that I'm not a professional editor, and though I've been writing for a long time, I don't have a degree in this. My works are not commercially successful, so you can gain some of the benefit of my experience, but just keep in mind that I'm not like the best that's out there, that I'm not a substitute for like an actual teacher and everything. And a lot of what I think, not just about writing, but about the world in general, is not agreed with by the vast majority of people. Most people, like I would, when I start to pick up some interest and so forth, I will like very swiftly be canceled for a lot of my political views and like the things that I've said on the other show and so forth. yeah, like I'm in some ways like um not notorious, but I'm an underground figure, and the underground is where I belong. And as soon as I pop my head up out of it, people will swiftly be trying to stamp me back into there. I guarantee it. Um, so yeah, like I'm happy if any of this is helpful, but keep in mind that there are people who are much, 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 much better editors than me. Like when it comes down to editing, um, like I would be like maybe one step up from a white belt, right? And there are definitely black belts of editing out there. People who I have tremendous admiration for, who can do things that I don't expect at any time in my life I will ever be able to do. Just because, like I said, the editing brain and the writing brain, those are two different people. And like becoming better at editing will make you a better writer. But getting to the apex of either, I think, is independent of the other. That's my theory from years of experience. So I love this scene right here, uh, where she's like, "You gonna cry, Gregulus?" And he like drops her into the snow, and she's like, "Dan," and he's like, "You gonna cry, Jokla?" Oh, love it. I really like I like the relationship between those two. I think it really tracks for a lot of it, and hopefully it's not too cringe for fucking people. Yeah, my own like first relationships were like very very different. They were like sweet, right? I'm almost all of my romance is like people are pretty nice to each other. I'm not like a tumultuous type person or whatever. But definitely, I was like much more of an asshole than Dan Gregulus in my first ever relationship. And some might say nothing has changed, but uh, all right. So, ooh, wait, we don't. Holy shit! Does that happen that quickly? Uh, oh wow, shit gets real in a fucking second here. I didn't realize this was gonna happen like this. So one thing that I'm not super pleased about is I didn't realize that I had written a foot scene into this. I guess that's all right. I don't know about that whole thing. Just working with a really good photo editor for a few months, someone who pares down photographic works, uh, totally changed the way I see making photographs. It's definitely a different way of thinking. Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, um, and keep in mind that like everybody is going to have more power at the thing that is most important to them in this life. Like, while I don't think that I'm like a great editor or anything like that, I think that my theory on like what's good in writing is very strong. I think that the writing is strong because it's like it's the most important thing to me. So it's the thing that I put the most time into. It's what I'm like thinking about when I close my eyes, when I go to sleep, and when I wake up in the morning. So they're like from advice that you can take from me as a writer, while balanced against the fact that that I'm not commercially successful. Like if you do the shit that I say, you will absolutely be able to complete a novel. Like I have zero doubt that you can make that happen. And you will absolutely be able to make like a good short story. Like that's where I feel more confident. And I would feel like fairly confident talking about like radio stuff and so forth too, just because I've done it for like a really long time. And it's important to me. You know, I fucking love the radio. All right, so here we are at chapter 82. I'm gonna cut. I don't think that we really. So yeah, I don't think that we did anything with the. I think previously like I had this idea that that would be like a little thing, like the lights don't work, but they're like hardening their defenses or whatever there. And I think it's just easier if the lights just always fucking work. Let me see. It really goes to your summary thing today. The thing I got most out of editing is learning what is this about. I so often remove my favorite images in answering this question. Things always ended up better as a result there. Yeah, I want to. I think like one of the that's an interesting point. Like one of the spaces where I say I'm not a good editor and we need somebody else in on this is I think that everybody who has watched a lot of the stream has seen a lot of things that should be taken out of this story, right? And I'm not going to take those things out of the story, right? And like I'm sure like on some level I'm aware of things like has a little too much or whatever there, but I'm not going to take these out of the fucking story. Like they're mine and I have a vested interest in them. And when an editor does try to come and tell me, hey, like this shit needs to be out of the story pronto, I am going to be like, okay, give me a month to think about it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because my initial response to that editor is going to be like, fuck you, right? Not like a friendly fuck you, like fuck you, how dare you, right? That's what I'm going to think. It's not what I'm going to say, right? Because I've worked with editors for a long time, and I know that it's going to take me about a month to come around to their way of seeing things. I've had situations where I have thought an editor was wrong for like a year, right? And then I read the thing like a year later. I'm like, oh, well, shit, they were right all along. You know, I just, it takes some serious time for me to take that kind of feedback because, you know, I care a lot about this writing. It's important to me. And like all this shit is on the page because I came up with it and I thought it was important. And in a lot of spaces, I'm going to be wrong. Like I guarantee you, those sex scenes are going to get pruned, right? Somebody's going to take a fucking serious set of shears to them, and you will never get to read about Dan Gregulis's pre-cum or a tearing sensation, as you know, like just like so many specifics that I like to think about, but the vast majority of people are like, nah, I don't know, Zach, get that shit out of there. But how long do we have? Okay, I think we have enough time to get through 7 pages if we start working on editing now. I've been doing that keto, and I'm starting to get like the keto sore throat thing or whatever. My goal is to get down to about 200 pounds. For a while, we were doing like the weight thing in the top bar. Then I fell off the wagon, and it was kind of depressing. But I've been doing better. So yeah, I don't want to be a fat fuck when I'm trying to market this book. That's a huge thing, by the way, if you're networking, by the way. Like if you know that you're going to be networking and trying to sell something and trying to meet with people, like I know, like I'm going to be in the summer trying really hard to market this book, right? And like I'm going to have an easier time of it if I'm like in good physical shape, like if I'm feeling confident and like my body and everything like that, it's going to be easier. People are going to be happier to be around me because I'll be less fat and like more attractive and so forth. I'm going to try to be a little bit friendlier and more desirable, so I can at least hint that I would sleep with some people if necessary to get the book published. I don't know that I'll actually have to, but I probably would if it were necessary and I were not dating somebody at the time. So Stratum says the difficult thing about writing is there's no other way to look at it but reading. A thing that can help with photographs or music is seeing it differently as thumbnails, low volume, etc. I found doing these two things made editing, understanding what something was about consistently so much easier, but you can't do that with a book. Well, I kind of digress because keep in mind, or I kind of disagree, not digress. I disagree because keep in mind, when we're reading the book aloud, we're engaging something completely different than we're engaging when we're reading it without subvocalizing, right? When you're reading something, it is a different type of thinking, unless you're one of those person that's like sounding out each word, which by the way, those people do exist, and they wind up being very good at reading audiobooks, right? Because that's the people who can't read without subvocalizing become really, really good at narrating because they don't miss anything, right? They want to understand like a whole subject and sentence and everything. And they're very slow readers. But yeah, I met with somebody who had won Grammys for recording audiobooks, and she was like, "Yeah, when I read like that slowly. Like I sound out each word in my head as I read, which is something that we try to teach children not to do because it slows you down and it breaks immersion too. Like if you're like sounding out each word in your head, you're not immersed, right? So, so Stratum says, I read that way in my head. I sound it out in my head. So there's a different type of reading that, like I've become aware that not everybody does, where you're just seeing the concepts in the book, right? Where the words are not blurring together. You're aware of each word as you're reading, but you suppress the vocal engine that's happening there, and you're just kind of seeing what's happening right there. It's like a very different kind of reading than having to sound everything out. And it's a skill that you build up. And if you haven't read for a while, you can feel that you have to build that muscle back up again. Um, so just like when we're talking about like differences between the way that people think, like the way that people read is different. I mean, there are people like everything down to the way that people breathe can be fucking different right there. So, but anyhow, for me, because as a reader, normally I'm not vocalizing things and not paying like the strictest attention to each sentence, but am kind of like flowing through it. The act of reading everything out, every line out, does help me to see it in a different perspective, and that's one of the ways that with this edit I've been able to like disengage slightly and edit a little bit more efficiently than I could previously. That said, oh, we should really edit. So there would be no hot chocolate this time. The outdoor lights came on when the Toyota rolled into the driveway. Oh yeah, this is like a shitty intro paragraph. How does she know that? Okay. Mm. So I like that that contrast that we have there, where there's no. There would be no hot chocolate this time. The outdoor lights came on when the Toyota rolled into the driveway, and Freya could see movement from the house. Someone at the side window was peering out at them. The face was shadowed, but the movement was distinctly Lassa, that tense energy she carried with her. The tense energy she always carried. Someone at the side window of the front door was peering out at them. The face was shadowed, but the movement was distinctly Lassa, the tense energy she always carried. Mm-hmm. The outdoor lights came on when the Toyota rolled into the driveway, and Freya could see movement from the house. Someone at the side window of the front door was peering out at them. The face was shadowed, but the movement was distinctly Lassa, the tense energy. Let me see. What do we have here? Man, do I feel like I'm lonely right now. Literally no one was watching until I came in. Well, actually, if you watch on the stream, like a bunch of people are watching on YouTube. So right now there are 4 people on YouTube. There's 1 person on Picarto. And you, I believe, are the only viewer on Twitch. So yeah, we're not alone. But thank you anyway. The movement was distinctly Lassa. It had the tense energy she always carried. Through the narrow slice of light, Freya could see an arm extended to something in the corner. Then Lassa moved back towards the kitchen. It was weird. Freya expected her mother to come charging out at them. They hadn't seen each other in days. Freya clenched her jaw. There was no running away now. She could tell Dan would rather stay, but she asked him to go, regretting her decision before the car even left the driveway. She was certain there would be a fight. Freya trudged towards the door with her shoulders squared, ready to come under enemy fire the moment she entered the house. Her phone was still in her pocket, stone dead. Lassa was bound to be furious. When Freya walked in the door, she was surprised to smell garlic and shallots. "Where have you been?" they both demanded in unison. And in the moment of confusion that followed, Freya realized she was the angry one, not her mother. Not her mother. Lassa's eyes were deeply shadowed and her skin was too pale. She looked like she hadn't slept or eaten in days. Freya felt an immediate pang of guilt. "I'm sorry," they said, again, almost together, and Freya blinked. It felt weirdly similar to the way she and Dan spoke. Her hand clutched the starball through her jeans, and Lassa's eyes followed it. Freya forced herself to let go, unclench her other hand from... "Where were you?" Freya beat Lassa to the punch before she could ask the same question. "In Winslow." "With Paul?" Okay, so Music Adolescent says, all right, I have 3 more months to practice Queen music on the piano until my school's talent show starts, because I didn't know they were announced the same month as when they start in May. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, like if you practice every day, you will win the school talent show and sleep with whatever person you are attracted to at that school. That's my prophecy. If you practice each day from then till now for at least an hour a day, make it so. But if you don't practice every day, you may not win the prize. So hop to it. "In Winslow," Lassa said. "With Paul?" Freya squinted in confusion. "Are you 2 back together?" "No. He owed me a favor. I needed to use the lab at Nordics." "Have you talked with Lynn? The police are looking for you." Lassa nodded. "They know I'm home. I've already gotten in touch with Hayden Kurnu and explained. I'm going to speak with them tomorrow. It's complicated, but I think this will all even out. No one should be kicking in our doors." "I've been calling and calling you. Did you lose your phone?" "The battery's dead. I was in Vermont with Dan." As exhausted as she looked, Lassa's eyebrows still shot up. Freya gave her a slow nod of confirmation. "Are you okay?" Lassa asked. "I'm fine," Freya assured her. "Are you okay?" "Not really, no," Lassa shrugged. "I must look like hell. Have you eaten?" Lassa glanced at the kitchen. The burner was on beneath the 15-quart graniteware stock pot. Freya sniffed the air. Her mouth was watering at the smell of garlic. She could hear broth bubbling over the hiss of the burners. On the counter, she could see cut potatoes drying on paper towels, and there was an empty bottle of Pinot Grigio. Not yet. What are you making? Freya asked. Moulets frites. Now it was Freya's turn to raise her eyebrows. Come help me cut up some potatoes. I didn't know you would show up. There's a lot to explain. Ooh. Yes, this dialogue doesn't flow. Not at all. It doesn't feel like a real conversation to me. It's just like characters. So let's think a little bit more. Where have you? Oh, I like this, and I like that. Okay, really, where were you? Freya beat Lassa to the punch before she could ask the same question. Ooh. All right. Where were you? Freya asked again. Before Lassa could ask her what was in her pocket. In Winslow, Lassa said. Oh, shoutouts to Chad there, who said, I'm just waking up. Good job. Good job not dying. That's wild. And then Music Adolescent is getting ready for school in the morning. I'm so glad I don't have to go to school ever again. I don't miss it. Not one fucking bit. Never liked it. With Paul? Freya squinted in confusion. Are you two back together? No. He just owed me a favor. I needed to use the lab at Nordex. Have you talked with Lynn? The police are looking for you. The police are looking for you. We had to go to Heidenkirchen and talk with Oliver Karhu. Everything's messed up. Lassa nodded. They know I'm home. I've already gotten in touch with Heidenkirchen and explained. I'm going to speak with them tomorrow. It's complicated, but I think this will all even out. No one should be kicking in our doors. I've been calling and calling you. Did you lose your phone? The battery's dead. I was in Vermont with Dan. As exhausted as she looked, Lassa's eyebrows still shot up. Freya gave her a slow nod of confirmation. Are you okay? Lassa asked. I'm fine, Freya assured her. Are you okay? Not really, no, Lassa shrugged. I must look like hell. I'll try to explain, but this is all so complicated. Have you eaten? Lassa glanced at the kitchen. The burner was on beneath the 15-quart graniteware stock pot. Freya sniffed the air. Her mouth was watering at the smell of garlic, and she could hear Her Her mouth was water. Her mouth was watering at the smell. Freya sniffed the air. Her mouth was watering at the smell of garlic. She could hear broth bubbling over the hiss of the burners. On the counter, she could see cut potatoes drying on paper towels, and there was an empty bottle of Pinot Grigio. Oh, shit. Oh, Spathywall, you got a new job? Is that the one in London or whatever? Oh, they said again almost together. Oh, yeah, let's take a look at that line. Oh, no, that's... I'm sorry, they said, almost at the same time. Freya blinked. It felt weirdly similar to the way she and Dan spoke. Cool. Is the State of the Union worth watching? I got bored like about 10 minutes in. Also, I was live narrating it to this journalism Discord, and then I got a warning because I said that Trump had announced that Jim Acosta's home would be the subject of a Predator drone strike, and they like silenced me for false reporting. And I just tried to explain to them, like even if that's not what he's saying, it's clearly what he's implying. But they didn't accept that. So Spethiwa says the best part is when Pelosi tears it up after it ends. I'm gonna have to read the transcript. I can't stand listening to Nancy Pelosi. She's just a fucking lich queen. Not really, no. Lassa shrugged. I must look like hell. I'll try to explain, but this is all so complicated. Have you eaten? Is Pinot Grigio capitalized? Okay, so wines named for their grape varietal are not capitalized. So Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. Cool. Let's can we get oh wow, people are capitalizing Pinot Grigio here. Grabbergunder is like the German name for that. Wait, and wait, did she actually tear up the physical speech? Oh my god. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi introduces new competitive paper tearing league. Send you a link to that server. I wish I could, but I've been like slowly working my way in there, and I can't send out invites or whatever yet. One thing that I learned is when you're like trolling a server, never bring your friends in because one of your friends will always give you away. And this is a server that Sloth put me onto, so I'm working on it. But the server itself is a troll. Like the admins are posing as like arch liberals, and that somehow they're getting like a continual stream of these 4chan idiotic incels coming in there, like just touting, like, want to fix all the world's problems? Vote for a straight Republican ticket in 2020. You know, like, and just like all the admins are pretending to be super Sijui. Yeah, so she did actually tear up her speak. I've always seen it capitalized, but I don't know shit about wine except for like that Franzia box. Shouts to Franzia, right there. I don't think it's capitalized. Like I don't. I think grape rattles. Yeah. What are you making? Freya asked. Suddenly ravenous. Moulets frites. All right, so okay, so this is. I'm glad we looked for this because it's hyphenated, which would be like mussel fries. Okay, moule frites. Lassa said. Moule frites. Lassa said. Now it was Freya's turn to raise her eyebrows. Come help me cut more potatoes. I didn't know if you would show up. There's a lot to explain, Lassa said. Why is there a rifle beside the front door? Freya asked. It was a military weapon, casually. The military weapon was resting in the alcove, casually leaning against the wall. That's my Seiko RK-95, Lassa said. Very good rifle. Sadly, few were made. You won't find many others here in America. I mean, why is it in the foyer? The idiot. If he comes to our house with a gun, he'll leave here in a bag, Lassa promised. Freya was silent a moment while she considered it. Can you show me how to shoot it? She asked. Lassa nodded with approval. Bring it here, it's loaded. The safety is on. I think we need more description of the rifle. And Chad says, well, I want lots of liberals in my server. You know, one of the things, it's not in the transcript because the coward Pelosi said nothing. Wow, that's wild. And it looks like fucking Buttigieg managed to steal the Iowa caucuses, which is awful. Like Buttigieg is, I guess, like what the Democrats must like is they're like, we need somebody crooked if we want to beat crooked Don. Yeah, we'll get a little bit more into the rifle in a second here because there's just not a. So this is a Seiko RK-95. This is what this rifle looks like. That's a banana clip. Military today. Let's take a close look at this guy. How many rounds are in the magazine? Let's say improved version of the Valmet. Easy to use and maintain. Curving 30 round magazine. And a curved 30 round magazine. was black with a folding stock and a curved 30-round magazine. What other details would we say visually there? I don't think Freya would like recognize that it was a Kalashnikov style. Manual gas valve enabled the use of rifle grenades. Tighter tolerances and higher specifications. It's a better weapon than the Soviet AKM. It might even be superior to recent Russian AK-103 and AK-15 assault rifles. God damn. Oh, what does it weigh? It weighs 4.5 kilograms. That's my Seiko RK-95, Lassa said. Very good rifle. Sadly, few were made. You won't find many others here in America. I mean, why is it in our foyer? The idiot. If he comes to our house... If he comes to our house with a gun, he will leave here in a bag, Lassa promised. Freya was silent a moment while she considered it. Can you show me how to shoot it? She asked. Lassa nodded with approval. Bring it here. It's loaded. The safety is on. The rifle was heavy, almost 10 pounds. It was strange to see it. How tall is this rifle? So the rifle is length 195 millimeters. I need that conversion to inches. Okay, so it's about a little over 3 feet tall. So it would come up to like here on Freya. The barrel shroud is knurled on those. Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, I can't really see from that picture. Let's take a closer look at this guy. No, it looks pretty... I don't see... Here's a 3D model of it, but we can't really go by that. Here's... Yeah, I don't see the knurls. Yeah, it's got like a polymer magazine. I like that she has right here, it's loaded. The safety is on. The rifle was heavy, almost 10 pounds. It was strange to see it sitting on the dinner table with a dish towel beneath it so it didn't scratch up the wood. I think... so final edit. I think they're... I think they have a glass dinner table. So we can find out in... so what are we at? We're at page 625. I think the countertop is glass. Wait. Kitchen table. Oh, yeah, this is... I think it's a scene with the star ball. There's a lot of tables. Yeah, see, right here, this line right here. So the meteorite didn't scratch up the glass. I knew. I'm um, pretty fucking happy with myself for catching that one. There are 157 tables in this book, by the way. Some of them are other words, but that's the only place in the book where the kitchen table is mentioned, by the way. Freya suspected there would be no hot chocolate this time. Well, she's wrong. She gets mussels instead. It's fucking amazing. Yeah, I want moulay frite. Maybe I'll get that tonight. The glass. Mm. Lasha showed her each piece of the gun, explaining how explaining how each part functioned, warning her about the safety, which could be tricky. She showed Freya how to unload the magazine and clear the chamber, and then how to reload and change magazines. This is the fire mode selector, but leave it on single shot. That's a 30-round magazine. Automatic will fire the whole thing in about 3 seconds. Aren't automatics illegal? Freya asked. No. You just have to jump through a lot of hoops to get a stamp for one. It took me almost 2 years of dealing with the ATF. They wouldn't issue me a permit for the grenade launcher, sadly. Lasse shrugged. Freya... Lasse shrugged. Freya couldn't tell if she was kidding or not. She wasn't smiling. Lasse paused, waiting until she had Freya's full attention. I really, really, really like just that scene right there where she can't tell if her mother's kidding or not about the grenade launcher. I can't tell either. This bitch is inscrutable to me, but I love just that little exchange. Really does it for me. I don't know about you guys, but I fucking love that right there. Lasse paused, waiting until she had Freya's full attention. The law says you have to tell someone to leave, and they need to refuse before you can kill them. I say, if you see him, shoot him, and don't stop firing until you're out of bullets. When the police come, say nothing. Let Lynn construct the narrative. If things go reasonably well tomorrow, I'll take you to the range tomorrow night. If the sack goes too much for you, we can buy you something of your own. Dan is 18, right? He might want to carry something, too. He's 18, but I don't think he could shoot someone. Everyone can. It's in here, deep, Lasse said, tapping the back of her head. Tapping the side of her head. Why are you laughing? It's nothing, Freya said. Just trust me. I know him pretty well. That's a good. I like this whole fucking scene right here. It's a very K relationship that she has with her mother right here. So let's get all the I'll just go on 4chan and try to get all my gunplay shit. Maybe I'll just ask Kakama to proofread all the gun shit for me. She's a real one. Neither of them could remember the last time Lasse had made mussels. Freya was fairly sure it had been at least a year ago. She'd probably cut the potatoes that time, too. As they were trying to recall, Lasse wondered if that was the time she'd run a little wild with the chili oil, and then stopped herself mid-sentence, but it was too late. They both knew where she was going. That was the time Randall was sweating and red in the face as if he'd just run a marathon, but he kept eating anyway, as they both laughed at him. He'd been such a wimp about spicy food. Sorry, Lasse said. There was kind of an unspoken agreement between them not to dig at the wound. It's okay. I was actually craving mussels last week, out of nowhere. Also, I'm happy you made these. Last week I was craving mussels for no reason. It was the same for me. Yeah, I suddenly wanted them as I was driving home. I got the idea out of the blue as I was driving home. Possibly we were perhaps we're deficient in selenium or manganese. Mussels are a good source of both. Speaking of nutrients, I wanted to talk about the fight we had on the. Speaking of nutrients, I wanted to talk about the fight we had over the insurer. I must apologize. It was me. I was the one who was sleepwalking. That's been happening to me more and more. I'm very sorry I didn't believe you. What? Freya asked, genuinely surprised. It was the last thing she'd expected. There's a chance I've had a stroke. I did some CT scans at Nordics. There's a tiny speck showing up. Maybe a tumor, maybe a clot. It's too small to tell. We could barely resolve it. Oh my God, Freya gasped. She had the feeling that everything was receding. She tried to take a breath and couldn't. Lassa reached out a hand and put it over Freya's. It isn't anything certain yet. If it's a stroke, it wasn't severe. They can barely detect it. Frequently, these things go away on their own. Just if I seemed a little crazy within the last few weeks, just if I seemed a bit crazy the last few weeks, there is a possible explanation. Lassa was trying to. Lassa was trying to sound light, but Freya felt like she was underwater and couldn't get air. Lassa was trying to sound like it wasn't a big deal, but Freya felt like she was underwater and couldn't get air. Hmm. Freya pulled her hand from under Lassa's and it shot into her pocket. Suddenly she felt a sharp dip in her stomach, and there was a terrible danger she'd lose everything she'd eaten. Wait, are they even eaten? Uh, yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about how they we don't get into the actual eating of the mussels there. So what do we have here? Recoil distress says, do people do CT scans in the USA or do they have them? Well, in her case, she would be the one, like she would be involved in like the setting up of it and so forth, but somebody else would have to perform the actual CT scan. Recoil Distress asked, my friend, do people buy novels? They still do, not in anything like the numbers that they used to. I don't think that there's a strong market for long novels of this sort, but this is what I felt compelled to write here. For the next, and honestly, like most of the fiction that I write is pretty long. I don't know why. I was just definitely after I finish the spate of books that I've written that are super long, I'm just gonna stop and start writing things that are like 200 pages, 250 pages long. But I don't know. You get a lot of room to maneuver in like a long ass thing like here. You can really take your time with certain things. So I enjoy the process of writing novels, but certainly it's not a good idea to do so. I would strongly advise everybody who, well, nothing really sells, to tell you the truth. I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, anytime that somebody asks if novels or writing or short stories or whatever sell, um, very, 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 very few people can make a living writing. It is just not well paid. The market is always uncertain, and previous success is not an indicator of future success for most people. Really is. There's a lot of lightning in a bottle happening right here. So yeah, anybody who's interested in the economics of publishing should. There are like several solid books on it. But I've been in publishing for a long time, and one thing that I often cite to people is that 90% of books that are put out lose money, like a significant amount of money. Like they don't recoup the costs of printing, or the cost of marketing, or the cost of whatever. And that seems like an insane figure, right? Imagine if you were a real estate agent and you lost money on 90% of the houses that you sold, right? Or if 90% of the time somebody drove through a McDonald's drive-through, you actually wound up giving them money or giving them like a burger for free or something like that. It's an insane industry. Um, yeah. So the vast majority of things don't earn out. None of my books have earned out at this point. None have ever even really come close. But they're still fun. So I'm still gonna do that. So, and 10% success rate is just, it's not success either. It's just earning out, right? That's getting to where you were when you started, or maybe you make like a few $1,000s or something like that when you factor in like the salaries of everybody. It's like very difficult to make any sort of a profit, and that's why you see so much consolidation of media and so many. You just see their strategy is like really the jellyfish strategy. Let's have as many offspring as possible, and some of them will be successful enough that we can continue the species, which is sad but true. So for short stories too, I want you to think about for every. Let's talk about Clark's World magazine, which is one where I know Neil Clark. I like him. He's a good dude. Doesn't really hold back his opinions, and I think he has like some pretty interesting thoughts about where the industry is going and so forth. For every story that they publish in Clark's World, I believe that they read somewhere between 1 and 5,000 stories submitted to them. Most of the stories, fortunately, they just throw away. All right, those numbers, I'm pulling those numbers straight out of my ass, so it may be more like 500 to 1,500 stories they read for each one that they put into the book. Yeah, because like 5,000 seems insane, but I'll tell you that like major publishers who just receive piles and piles of unsolicited manuscripts, the ones that accept manuscripts that are unsolicited, it is more like 1 in 10,000 manuscripts that were sent to them will be considered for publication. Like I had a novel get picked up by Bain Books, and I still might hear back from them, but it's been like a year at this point, so they're probably not going to sell my book or attempt to buy it or anything. So we'll have to edit it ourselves. So what do I think about on demand printing instead of using a die? So I think the vast majority of people who are writing books should be using CreateSpace or a similar service. CreateSpace is now called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. Amazon really takes a huge fucking chunk out of what you're doing. Um, but for the most part, since people are going to be losing money on it, they should spend as little money as they can get away with. For the most part, um, editing super expensive. Licensing cover art is relatively expensive. Typesetting is expensive. So for the vast majority of new writers, I think the smartest thing to do is to get involved with a local meetup that does novel critique. Try to get like some of your directional editing there. Try and get a group of friends to help you with editing if you possibly can, and then pay a professional proofreader. Proofreaders are it's super indispensable. It's a shame really because I don't think correct grammar and everything is super important, but it just really ruins for a certain segment of the population, and it skews more into fantasy and science fiction, which is why I write. There are more persnickety motherfuckers in fantasy and science fiction than almost any other field. The book is ruined for those people. If there's like a big ass typo or you just have like a whole page that's nothing but the word fuck for no reason. Things that a proofreader would catch, it totally breaks their immersion, and they will not hesitate to comment on it. And if your Amazon reviews are nothing but comments about how you put a comma instead of a period on page 73, well, great. That's what people are paying attention to, not the quality of your book. Most of my books now are POD for the most part through Amazon, and I haven't done like any hardcovers or whatever. I was thinking about printing a few myself, but bookbinding is actually pretty difficult there. So yeah, for the majority of people, I advise you to like do your own typesetting. If you're a good designer, do your own cover design. If you're not a good designer, Jesus Christ, please go on Fiverr or something like that and get like a halfway competent cover design. If you are just terrible and have no money or whatever there, literally just don't have a picture or whatever. Just have a text treatment, which is just letters, right? Because nothing makes your book look worse. And like, my covers are not fucking stellar or anything. Like here's the cover for one of my books, right? Uh, it's a little bit self-publishing, right? I don't know what I was thinking. I kind of like the look of this outer glow on this guy here. So this is okay, you know, but it's clearly like this didn't come from a major house, right? Here's a book that came from a major house. If we want to take a look, like one, I don't have a fucking National Book Award to put on. I mean, I could give myself one. Um, Actually, this is like not an especially good dust cover either. Their printing quality is not great, but yeah, it's a mass market paperback with like ragged edges and so forth. There. Anyhow, yeah, I'm a big fan of CreateSpace in general for independent authors. I think the level most people are working at, they should be spending as little money as they possibly can get away with. The places where you can't skimp are editing, cover design, layout, and proofreading. And those are quite expensive, right? So a lot of people are putting out books that don't contain those things, and they're not doing well. Like the vast majority of them vanish into the ether. Um, I'll tell you, like a lot of people don't agree with that perspective that you have to spend money for those things, and they just kind of schlock shit out onto CreateSpace. And like I don't know, I may just be like a holdover because maybe they're doing better than I'm thinking. But yeah, like definitely there's some cheap and dirty publishing going on there. Anyhow, yeah, it's kind of depressing to think about where publishing is at, but there's no real alternative if you want to put out books. So anyhow, those are some of my thoughts there. They're a little disjointed, but I'm trying to edit this chapter at the moment there. Dinner was delicious. Neither of them could remember. Okay. Let me see. If publishing is that easy, that allows for more people like me, and probably that. Uh, let's see. Well, I want to keep in mind that what's the when we say publishing is easy, like getting a physical book made is relatively easy. But the task of publishing is not just creating the book, it's also convincing people to read it, right? Like having the physical book is just that. It's like a book sitting on a shelf, right? Getting people interested in reading the book, um, and which is your ultimate objective. Like if you put out a book and nobody really reads it or whatever, you've failed, and all the time that you put into it is more or less wasted, right? And like you'll feel good about like I'm happy about the books that I put out, right? I feel a lot of pride in them, and it was like very satisfying to me. It was one of my life goals to put out books, but not that many people read them. So I have to consider that thus far I have failed, right? Because I feel like if you're going to spend years of your life writing, and literally a year, like I've spent, I'll spend like 4 years on this book when all is said and done. If you put 4 years into something like that, you should get some circulation on it if you want to consider yourself successful. And it is a process, like you build yourself up to it and so forth. But yeah, while it is easy to create the physical books, publishing is like much more than just like creating like a physical object or making an ebook or whatever. There, like if we felt like it, we could just throw this like, and we're doing it right now. Like I'm just throwing the Word document or the Pages document for this guy on the internet. You can find it on like Wattpad and so forth. We could just say that we're done at that point, and we'd be finished. And we could just like literally, I could right now in 3 days, we could take the EPUB from this. We could just export this as an EPUB. We could throw together like the cover design that I've already got. We could throw it onto Amazon as is without like any editing or proofreading and so forth. And we could have it on Amazon within a week. But nobody would read it, right? Like not even, I wouldn't even tell the like 7 or 8 people watching this to read it, because I would feel like, we didn't get it edited. We didn't get it proofread. It's not like great. You know what I mean? And I want to have something that's great before I ask people for their money for it, or even ask them to like read it, because it's a big ask from some. Like really, like think about like if we have an 800-page book here, that's going to take your average person about 20 to 30 hours to read it, right? Imagine going to one of your friends and being like, "Hey, how would you like to help me move for an entire fucking week?" You know what I mean? It's like, because it's heavy lifting that somebody's doing in their mind when they read a book. And a lot of young authors think, oh, people like I'm doing them this service by giving them this thing to read. And it's really a task that you're giving somebody. You're asking them to come along on this journey with you. And inherent in it is the promise, like, this will be a good journey. It's going to be worth your while. You're going to enjoy what I'm doing and so forth. And the vast, vast majority of people who attempt to take you on that journey have led you astray. Like they are taking you on a shitty journey, right? You are not going to enjoy the journey, and you are going to slightly resent the friend that made you come on that bullshit trip, like a fucking road trip through Iowa or whatever there. And like the part of why I've spent like the last 63 days editing there is I don't want my journey to be a bullshit one. I want it to be a good journey for the people that are like goodly enough to read through this. So how do you ask people who have no idea what the book is to pay for it? It's like a chicken and egg issue. I will tell you that I'm not the person to ask about any kind of marketing. I've not been successful and so forth. The only thing that I really know is I know a little bit about live streaming and broadcasting. So my idea was like I just start live streaming like the editing of the novel and see if I could generate some interest that way. mixed success. You know what I mean? I think about maybe like 100 people total have been exposed to the novel that way. But I'll give you um, another thing. Like I could post on Reddit or something like that. They do like a self promo Saturday on their science fiction subreddit where people can promo stuff that they've written. And once every few months or something, I'll promo whatever I'm working on there, and then I can get if I put one of my ebooks up for free on Amazon or something, I can get like about 1 to 300 people will download that ebook for free, and maybe 20 of those people will read it, and maybe if I'm lucky, 1 or 2 of them will leave a review or something like that. So I don't know much about marketing. I abhor marketing. I don't like seeing advertisements. I find I've worked at marketing companies before, just in like a technical aspect, and I was miserable. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of trying to convince someone else to like buy my shit, to like put one over on them. The idea of like manipulating them in that way. I don't like it, and it's which is people who know my other work on the internet would find that like kind of strange, because like I have like some degree of talent of bullshitting people, but I don't like it in like a personal way. Like as a comedy device, it's okay, but I really like when I try to promote this to people, like I try to join communities and talk with people, get to know people. I don't just spam my shit all over the place to people who don't care about it. And I haven't, I'll tell you, like I have not been super successful with any of my ventures. But at least I do feel good about the way that we've chosen to market the things that we've done thus far. Like for my first novel, we didn't do any marketing. It didn't do particularly well. The second novel, I reached out to like reviewers all over the internet and spent about 3 weeks getting, actually like more like a few months, just sending out review copies to people and soliciting reviewers and seeing if they would want to do a review or so. So you can see that there are like 15 to 20 reviews from kind of like mostly bloggers for the most part. I didn't get into any magazines or anything like that, though I attempted to. And didn't really have much of an impact, to tell you the truth. So in terms of like building a buzz and so forth, it's people's whole job to market books. That's all they do. And what they try really hard to do is get like it mentioned in big podcast and fucking put into like if Asimov says something about it or a Locus or something like that. Or but I mean, if you think about it, when I want to find something new to read, most of what I'll do is just I'll go like looking for like, oh, what were the top 10 science fiction books last year, and then take a gander through whatever some random fucking blogger compiled or whatever there. So yeah, it's as we're getting closer to the end of this book, I'm gonna have to find a way to market it, and I don't know what I'm gonna do there. I think a lot of people just like slough this off and try to have like a publishing company do it. But I'll tell you that even if you have like a publisher with a marketer for you, that marketer has like 20 different books on their plate that they're trying to market. And the best they might be able to get for you is like one interview or one article in like a like small magazine or something like that. Unless your work is like really gripping the public narrative, you're not going to have tremendous success. And like the people who have been like runaway successes with their self-published NaNoWriMo stuff, like Hugh Howey is one that got away with. I have no idea how they did that. Like fucking Andy Weir, where you got like people in NASA interested in the Martian. I have no idea how you go about doing that. And it's really something that I need to think about more as we're going into this. But we also need to get 3 more pages done to get through this. There wasn't so much as a single fry. There wasn't so much as a drop of broth or a single fry left. Fry left when Freya and Lasse were through. Conversation only resumed once they'd finished devouring everything. So where did I get my website made? Um, so I made it. I will tell you, like almost everything that you see here on the screen, I've done myself. Like I made the website. I did all the graphic work for it. If you check out my books, I'm the one that's typeset every single word in there. Like I taught myself InDesign and did all my own typesetting. For the cover art, it's all cover art that I've searched out and found. I do the cover design, but not the art itself, right? Because I'm not an artist. So I haven't drawn anything. But yeah, like I found this image in the Rijksmuseum and requested like a high DPI version of it and put together. And like you can see, what do we have here? You can see like, so the interior design and layout and everything, all yours truly right there. And we got this little violin at the top. And I'm not a professional typesetter. Like I think a real typesetter can take a look at my work and be like, okay, well, nice try, Zach. But what the fuck are you doing? Yeah, like I don't have the money to pay a typesetter. So I learned to do it myself. And I don't have, and like I'm pretty cheap with the most I've ever spent to license cover art has been like $300 for survival mode, and I think it was just $250 for the cover for Zan and Ink, and then everything else that I put out, I've just taken public domain images and done some work on them to make them my own. Because I'm like broke. The website I put together on my own. All the video equipment and stuff that I have here is stuff that I put together for my other show, and we repurposed for this thing. Like if you look around my apartment, there's like a green screen wall behind me and so forth for some other stuff that I do. So yeah, like every aspect of this is something that I'm doing myself for the most part. The thing that I can't do myself so far is like I had to rely on external editors for the most part up until this point, and now I'm doing more work there. Like this whole edit is just like I realized like with this book, if I can't get a major publisher to bite on it, I'm gonna have to pay for an editor myself, and I want the book to be in better shape so that I will pay less money for that editor, right? Because they're quite expensive, and you like a good editor is at least $40 an hour, right? So if the book's in better shape, we could save like maybe like a few $1,000s just on them having to make less stupid changes there. And similarly, like like there'll be less for the proofreader to do, and a better book will be a little easier to market. So yeah, I had to figure that out myself. Yeah, everything that I do, and like eventually I need to record my own audiobooks for the most part. I've really struggled with finding the motivation to do that because it is like a struggle to narrate things. But here we are, like you can do it if you set your mind to it. But yeah, anybody who's interested in learning to do their own typesetting, I'm happy to explain. I recommend not trying to do your own cover design unless you've been doing design work for a while. It takes a long time to get passable at design work. But there are some like very simple rules that you can just follow to come up with something that is like acceptable for like a first project or something like that. Although I think my covers look pretty cheesy to like an outsider for the most part, but whatever, they were free. Yeah, happy to talk about any of that process with anybody who's interested in doing it themselves. Typesetting is one that I particularly tell people that they should get into because it's very satisfying to lay all the words out on the page. It's neat to make some of like the decisions, like do we break here? Do we move here? What do we do with the widows and orphans? Like how do I want the text to look? How would I like to have my epigraph laid out? How do I want my page like titles? Like you can do a lot. And what people don't realize is like the process of typesetting, like deciding where the words are going to be on the printed page, gives you some creative freedom to do some interesting things. So, typesetting is when you open up a book, right? It doesn't look like a Word document. Look at this Word document, right? If we look at here, you know, the edges are ragged and everything. It's not broken up into sections. The page numbers are different and so forth. If we look at a typeset page, I don't know how well you can see this here, but it's laid out in a specific way where it's going to fit into the book. We choose where we're going to break each paragraph. In some cases, we don't want. Oh, this is not a good example actually, because this one was not actually typeset very well. Like it was just like a quick throwaway book. But essentially, we want the text to flow, and we're looking for things like where there be lines of blank spaces, like where it'll like track the eye down. See where there's like this thing right here, like between was, but, kept. So those lines, they're called rivers, and they tend to drag the eye down there and break people up from reading. So there are a few things like that that we try to take out of printed books, so that it'll be easier for people to read through them. Um, it's something that I'm not like stellar at and so forth, but part of the process of making a printed book is typesetting it. Usually people use, at this point, Adobe InDesign is like the de facto standard for printed matter. And it's a little complicated, but it's worth picking up. And typesetting is not super duper expensive, and it's become very approachable also. So that's a place where if you don't want to learn typesetting, you don't have to, but I enjoy it. There wasn't so much as a single drop of broth there wasn't so much as a drop of broth or a single fry left when Freya and Lasso were through. Conversation only resumed once they'd finished it, once they devoured everything. Neither of them could remember the last time Lassa had made mussels. Mm. Okay. So good. So here, Lassa reached out a hand and put it over Freya's. It isn't anything certain yet. If it was a stroke, it wasn't severe. So we. I underwent some CT scans at Nordics. There's a tiny speck showing up. Maybe a tumor, maybe a clot. It's too small to tell. We could barely resolve it. If it's a stroke, it wasn't severe. Frequently, these things go away on their own. Just if I seemed a bit crazy the last few weeks, there's that's one possible explanation. Lasso was trying to sound like it wasn't a big deal, but Freya felt like she was underwater and couldn't get air. Her mother watched her expression with increasing concern. Lasso watched her expression with. Lasso was watching her with a deepening look of concern. Freya pulled her hand from under Lasso's and it shot to her pocket. She felt a sharp dip in her stomach. She was suddenly in danger of losing dinner. She fought to keep from vomiting. Before it could stop her, she pulled the starball out and held it in front of her. Held it out in front of Lasso. "Did you touch this?" Freya asked, forcing... "Did you touch this?" Freya asked, forcing the words out through her teeth. A cold feeling was blooming in her head. Her veins were full of ice. Lasso drew her head back, looking at Freya like she was crazy, but there was something in her eyes when she looked at the starball. Freya was sure she'd seen it before. "It was on your nightstand when I took the lunesta away. It was on your nightstand when I took the lunesta away." A troubled look passed over Lasso's face. "I'd meant to ask you about it, but it must have slipped my mind." "Did it poke you?" Freya asked. So poke is too cutesy of a word there. So, did it jab you? Freya asked. Lasso's mouth was an O of surprise. She turned her hand over to stare at her palm. "Yes." "And I looked at it and I couldn't see how. It must have been a tiny shard of glass." "I'd forgotten until you said that." As she said it, they shared a look of unease. Lasso didn't forget things like that. "What's happening?" Lasso asked, and it was strange to be the one with the answers while her mother was afraid. She wasn't usually the one with the answers. "This isn't a marble. I found it in the core of a meteorite that crashed into the Silas River. It's either an alien or a piece of alien technology. It stuck me too." For a moment, Lasso's incredulous look dipped into anger, as if she wondered why Freya thought she was stupid enough to believe something so crazy. But Freya was adamant. Her resolve hardened under scrutiny. She could feel the starball getting warm. "I can prove it. If you look at this under a microscope, it's definitely artificial. It doesn't look like anything man-made I can find. Do you feel something cool in your head when you started to get angry? Did you feel something cool in your head when you started to get angry just now? Or feel nauseous when we started to talk about it?" "Yes." Lasso's lips made a tight line after the admission, as if they were trying to prevent more words from escaping. "That's the starball trying to pacify you. Trying to stay hidden. Feel how warm it is? It has to expend energy to do that." Lasso touched the starball as she might a live hornet, certain she would be stung. Freya could see her fighting with the idea. There was no denying it was too warm for body heat alone. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Lasso asked. "I didn't want to," Freya said, suddenly realizing she might have made a terrible mistake. If Lasso wanted to take the starball from her, she could physically do it. Freya couldn't stop her. Freya felt a shrinking moment of fear. Her eyes fell on the closest weapon, a fork. Oh, so here we need to clear the rifle off of the table so they can eat. When dinner was ready, Freya returned the rifle to its place beside the door and then joined Lasso with gusto. And then set the table. They ate with gusto. They ate with gusto. There wasn't so much as a drop of broth or a single fry left when Freya and Lasso were through. Conversation only resumed once they devoured everything. Neither of them could remember. Okay, cool. Yeah, a big part of this, like I'm always telling people, but like a big part of writing is like another something that's a big part of improv, which is object permanence, remembering where things are in a scene and making sure that they don't. You just don't just forget the fact that there's an automatic rifle sitting on the kitchen table. Whatever earlier, like the table had transmuted from fucking glass into wood magically, and there are no wizards in this story, man. So yeah, like a big part of what a line editor and a proofreader are doing are looking for these consistency errors in a story, and the more of them that we take out, the less work the line editor and them have to do. If there are no mistakes in your story, then a proofreader can't miss those mistakes. So we want to get rid of as many as possible. Let's see. Freya felt a shrinking moment of fear. Her eyes fell on the closest weapon, a fork. She forced the idiot thought out of her head. Lassa's eyes were boring into her, demanding answer. I like that she's like thinking of stabbing her mother with a fork so she doesn't take her magic rock away. Mm. Rondito says, I just want to make a small difference in the world, says Lindsay Harper as she carefully packs small bottles of essential oils into a care package. In just a few days, the package will arrive in China, where its contents will solve coronavirus for good. That's good. I like that. I didn't know what this was for a long time. I thought it was just a weird rock. That aversion it generates kept me from investigating it for a long time. When I took it to the lab, I thought I was going to throw up. It doesn't want to be examined. Doesn't want? Is it sentient? Does it talk? It's definitely observing its surroundings and reacting to them, but I don't know if it's sentient. The only communication The only communication I have with it is when it tries to calm me down if I'm getting too upset, and the nausea thing. The only communication I have with it. They use it a lot here rather than Starball. The only communication I have with the Starball is when it tries to calm me down if I'm getting too upset, and the nausea thing. I've tried all kinds of talking to it. It doesn't answer. I've tried every method I can think of. It doesn't answer. Lassa stared at the Starball. Her hands were gripping the edge of the dinner table. Her hands were clenched into pale fists. So you call it a star ball. You might have the same thing in your head. You might have the same thing in your head. Has it been affecting you? Yes, absolutely. I was definitely sleepwalking in Stell. I was definitely sleepwalking as well. I woke up one night and I drank a whole case of Ensure. I felt awful the next day. Maybe it needs some kind of nutrient. Maybe it needs some kind of nutrient to power itself. Lassa gestured at the empty bowl of mussel shells. Many trace elements are in mussels, it makes sense. It makes sense. So this must be the culprit with the network issue at Heidenkernu. And here, the trouble with the internet. The network at Grayson was acting up too. And you didn't tell anyone. What would I tell them? A rocket from space is slowing down the internet? I would have listened to you, Lassa insisted. You weren't around, and when you were, we were fighting. Then you ran off, Freya said, her voice harder than she meant it to be. Lassa took it like a punch. It was a second before she could continue. I don't want anyone to take it away from me. I need it, Freya said, hearing an echo of the way she'd protested when Lassa took the Lunesta away. She clenched her jaw. She clenched the orb in her fist. She wouldn't let the starball go without a fight. What do you mean? Lassa asked. It does other things. I think it's benevolent. When I found it. Freya's eyes were suddenly hot with tears. She hadn't meant to tell Lassa, but the words were just pouring out. I couldn't take it anymore. I was at the rapids to drown myself. When the meteorite struck, I fell in the river. I barely made it out. There were a bunch of times afterwards. I was almost there, but it keeps pulling me back. I'd be dead without it. There was dead silence in the room as the words sunk in. There was dead silence as the words sunk in. It was the instant before a car crash. Time was protracting further and farther out. Time was protracting, but it was still too late to swerve. The thin strands holding Lassa up were snapping one by one. And Freya watched her expression collapse. The bridge could not bear the load. Her mother buried her face in her hands and bawled. The table shook with her sobs. The dishes rattled in protest. Freya couldn't think of what to do, so she sat dumb while her mother wailed. She was impaled by guilt. This was the worst thing she'd ever done, and nothing could make this better. Lassa cried for a long time, and when Freya could find her voice, it was only to plead that she was sorry again and again. The words rolled away without impact, rain against glass. Finally, she had the sense to shut up. Lassa raised her head, her eyes shut tight with suffering, wet lines running down her face. When she opened her eyes, Freya could not take her stare. I'm sorry, Lassa pleaded, her voice raw and ravaged. I'm so sorry, Freya. It's my fault, Freya protested, but Lassa only shook her head from side to side. She didn't ask Freya why she'd done it. No explanation was needed. Does Garboglio know? Lassa asked, her posture suddenly straightening. Her hands tensed. Freya could see she wanted something outside of them to be angry at. I didn't tell him. He doesn't know about any of this, really, though he's seen the starball. He just caught me with his hand in my pocket. He has seen the starball. He caught me fiddling with it in my pocket. He thinks it's just a lucky marble. Are you okay now? Yes, Freya said. I think I'm okay now, as long as I have this. She looked at Lassa intently, weighing what she wanted to say next with great care. The first time you disappeared, you took Randall's gun with you. Were you going to kill yourself? Lassa looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth fell open. She was trying to shake her head no, but they both knew the truth. Yes, she admitted, turning her face away. That's obvious. I didn't do it. That's obvious. Something stopped me. Her eyes focused on the star ball. Oh. Fuck. For a long moment, they both stared at the ball in her hand. For a long moment, they were both staring at the orb. Did it save me? It might have. It definitely saved me. I felt it get hot with activity when it wasn't affecting me. That might have been when it was working on you. Working on? Lassa caught the phrase, weighing it in her mouth. Okay. I believe you, Freya. We don't have to tell anyone, at least not until we know more about this. What have you learned about it so far? Freya related everything she'd learned at the Grayson lab, promising to show Lassa her notes when her phone was charged. She took it to her nightstand and plugged it in, hoping there would be a text from Dan when it came back to life. As she explained what she'd tried so far, Lassa seemed impressed with her investigative approach. Are you having strange dreams, too? Lassa asked. Constantly. So, Lassa began said it. So, Lassa leaned back in her seat. This explains a few things. For the last few weeks, I've been getting strange ideas for tests to run. They come to me at all hours of the day, sometimes in my dreams. I feel not compelled, but strongly inclined to run them. Like I could stop if I wanted to, but the curiosity is irresistible. Does that make sense? Freya nodded. I used to feel this way during my research when I was younger. I thought maybe I was getting back some of my old zeal. It seems like instead I'm being led somewhere. Karhu said they couldn't really understand what you've been doing or the data you've been accessing. What were you working on? Nothing concrete, just hunches. But I feel all these ideas are pointing to something enormous on the horizon, some great understanding. That thing is trying to bring me to some conclusion. Lassa pointed at the star ball. Would I understand any of it? Not much of it. I don't understand all of it myself. I've run several tests on casomorphin. That's a peptide derived from milk. The tests are on its interaction with endothelial cells. Not strictly unusual, but a little outside the scope of my department. Was probably raising eyebrows as I've been working with Pandora virus and CMV. What's CMV? What are those? Cytomegalovirus is mostly associated with mono and pneumonia. That's not as weird as it sounds. It's a common vector for gene expression. Lassa halted mid-sentence. Her face was drawn with turmoil. She was growing perceptibly paler as Freya watched her. What is it? Freya, this could be a weapon. It could be trying to build a pandemic to wipe us out. Why would it bother? Lassa tilted her head and narrowed her eyes at Freya. What do you mean? It can just wait. We'll be long gone before any alien force could reach us. I'd be surprised if we made it to... I'd be surprised if humanity survived to 2100. That's ridiculously pessimistic. Perhaps they seed a target world with these while their invasion force is on the way, and when they arrive, the planet is depopulated, ripe for conquest. Freya shook her head. Interstellar conquest doesn't work at sublight speeds. It's too expensive. It takes too long. Outside of the organic life, there isn't anything here that can't get closer to wherever they are. That makes so many assumptions about things you can't possibly know. What if they have FTL? If they do, then it's over already. And what if they have FTL? If they do, then it's over already. It's over anyway. It's already over. If they do, then it's already over. It's more likely they don't have FTL, and this is the largest mass it made sense to send. It showed up encased in a shell of nickel, by the way. It crashed into the mud of the riverbed. No propulsion, no guidance. I don't think it can move under its own power at all. If I hadn't dug it up, it might have stayed there for centuries. I think it's much more likely to be a probe than anything else. Maybe it contains instructions on how to get in touch with them. Lassa nodded, taking in the new information. Freya was braced for an immediate counter-argument, but none came. It was so strange to be involved in a conversation about something serious with her mother that hadn't become an argument. It was strange to be involved in a conversation about something serious with her mother that had not turned in, that hadn't turned into an argument. So we have Yossi Paul here, who says, wow, you suck. Look how many spelling mistakes. In English, that would be, look at how many spelling mistakes you have made, would be like a complete sentence. Look how many spelling mistakes is pretty obvious that English is not your first language. So therefore, I am your superior in this regard. You may bow before me. Although probably your Israeli or Hebrew or whatever is better than mine. Yossi. But anyhow, I don't see any fucking spelling mistakes on this page. Hold on, how far do we have to... Quesomorphin, these are all spelled correctly. Karhu spelled correctly. I don't see a fucking spelling mistake anywhere. I feel like you might not be speaking in earnest. Maybe you're attempting to troll me on my stream. But who can know? I love Yoki. I love Yoshi. Big Yoshi. Wait, is Yossi Paul? Is that Effie? It talks a little bit like Effie. Effie, I swear to God, if you were fucking with these streams, I'm gonna ban you from both Stress and LRH forever. Like, I don't want to deal with your nonsense on these things. And that's like a real promise. I will just actively ban you from those two spots, and I won't let up for years. So you'll have to evade every single fucking day. Let me see. So yeah, so at 8:21, Effie joined the chat, right? And then this chat comes through at 8:22, where he would have seen that. So that's Effie right there. Oh, Effie. They'll make us fucking come after you in real life. We'll absolutely do it. Like, I do not like fucking with retarded people, right? I find it unsavory to attack the mentally unfit. But I swear to God, if you are fucking with me on this thing, we will come after you. Just putting it out there. Like, you could just leave now and continue to be a pest on FNet, and we won't bother you. But yeah, you are completely unwelcome. Fucking Effie. Anyhow, that dark twist aside, this story is actually getting interesting here. That's ridiculously pessimistic. Perhaps I see the world... They might see the target world with these while their invasion force is on the way. Then when they arrive, the planet is depopulated and ripe for conquest. they can travel faster than light, this is already over. It's more likely they don't have FTL, and this was the largest mass it made sense to send. If I hadn't dug it up, blah, blah, blah. Lassa nodded, taking in the new information. Freya was braced for an immediate counter-argument, but none came. It was strange to be involved in a conversation about something serious with her mother that hadn't turned into an argument. Lassa was so badly wounded that she couldn't talk like herself, couldn't hide it. Their eyes met and Lassa looked away. There was silence as they both searched for something to say. Lassa was first. Okay, here's an angle. It could be pest control by a race that doesn't want to deal with other intelligent life emerging. Maybe if it detects a certain degree of industrialization, it wipes them out before they can develop into a problem. If it hits a world without sentient life, it might just stay dormant. That would explain the Fermi paradox. It's an interesting idea. Freya thought she was only indulging Lassa. She told herself she didn't really believe that. But perhaps the starball wouldn't let her. Freya held the orb up to the light, looking at the halo of violet translucence. It's a corona. Just putting it out there. Or prescient. Freya held the orb up to the light, looking at the halo of violent translucence surrounding it. Could this be the poison bead that oh, wow. Could this be the poison bead that wiped out the whole cockroach nest? It would all be on her. She was the one who brought it here, into their home. She was the one who dug it out of the river and concealed it. Whatever happened as a result of all this, she would be ultimately responsible. You saved the meteorite shell, right? Of course, Freya said. I have measurements on it too. She was beginning to explain how she'd figured out how to measure it, but Lassa had drifted off. Her eyes were unfocused. Freya was annoyed. She'd been so proud of figuring that out. She wanted to keep talking about this, to figure it out. She wanted to keep talking about this, to hear. She wanted to keep talking about this. More than that, she didn't want to be left alone with the weight of what she'd done, with the sound of her mother wailing in her ears. But Lassa was finished. She held her hand over her mouth and tried to stifle a yawn. I'm sorry, I'm falling out. We can start thinking about other tests to run tomorrow. We'll get some better idea of what this is, and if it's dangerous. Oh, so forever alone ye, or forever alone IE, says oi. All right, welcome to the chat here. We're editing this novel, a clip of about 10 pages per day, and it's starting to get really science fiction right here. We'll get some better idea of what this starball is and if it's dangerous. I really don't think it's a weapon, Freya said, trying to think of a way to substantiate her argument without having to explain unity. Neither of them was ready for that. Again, Freya felt the allure of forbidden knowledge whispering at the back of her thoughts, while her conscious mind was screaming that it would destroy them both. Does Nordix have an electron microscope? Freya asked, trying to distract herself from the perilous chain of thought. Yes, but we'd have to figure out first if that thing needs air. An electron microscope needs a vacuum to work. An electron microscope requires vacuum. It came from space. Right, but perhaps it was hibernating or somehow dormant, then it came to life here. Oh, that's a really good idea. That's a good point. I didn't think of that, Freya said. Lassa tapped on the side of her head. She was, after all, a scientist. Freya felt stupid for not coming to her sooner. The thought of accidentally killing the starball made her stomach plunge. We can measure that first. Additionally, because we suspect this is some kind of a machine, I'd be leery of hitting it with an electron beam. Why? Doesn't the beam just bounce off? No, it penetrates the sample based on beam intensity. X-rays are generated throughout the interaction volume. I would assume the starball was somehow hardened against radiation since it traveled through space and is still active, but there's no way to know. I was going to ask about using an X-ray next, Freya said. Assuming it's going on, or assuming it understands, assuming it understands what's going on around it and has a good idea of what can destroy it, the starball might try generating a version again if we're about to run a test that could harm it. But we can't rely on that. There's a lot of non-invasive testing we can do before we get into anything like that. I have a lot of ideas already. Even on the verge of passing out, there was excitement in Lassa's voice. If she were physically able, Freya was certain she would be driving them to the lab this very moment. The challenge the starball presented spoke to Lassa's core, the thing that had made her a researcher, a scientist, an interrogator. She had a fundamental need to know. As she considered it, Freya decided there was no danger that Lassa would tell anyone about the starball. She would never relinquish the chance to find out for herself, no matter what threat it posed. It was a useful bit of insanity. I'll take care of the dishes, Freya said. Thank you for making dinner. Thank you, Lassa said. She sounded grateful, even though she would have normally just told Freya to do it. She sounded grateful, even though ordinarily, she would have just ordered Freya to do the dishes. In the other room, Freya's phone dinged as it came to life. She walked over and got it, a little afraid of what she might find. There were missed calls climbing up the screen, so many her phone was almost unresponsive when she tried to scroll up. It's struggling. You called so many times. I was worried. You could have left a note or something. Freya turned and cast a sideways glance back at Lassa, who'd realized mid-sentence what she was saying and covered her mouth. What a stupid thing for me to say, Lassa admitted. Freya shrugged and turned back to her phone. Nothing else, she said, a little dispirited when there was nothing from Dan. Okay. Okay, we'll talk more tomorrow, Lassa promised. Rising slowly and moving towards her bedroom with heavy steps. She's getting older, Freya thought. Lassa stopped and turned around, and for a moment Freya was afraid they united and her thoughts had been overheard. But Lassa stood there for a moment, looking at her with red-rimmed eyes that had no tears left to give. Freya, I'm so sorry. I'll never forgive myself, Lassa said. Her voice croaked, her head hung low, she was in ruins. Her mind could find no words, but her body was covering the distance between them, sweeping up Lassa in an embrace. Quickly it became Freya holding her mother upright. Lassa could barely stand. Freya held on tight, helping Lassa towards her room. She was struck by the feeling that she was acting more like Dan than herself. It felt like a piece of him inside of her. I've got it, thank you. I'm sorry. Lassa was waving her away, moving under her own power again. Freya felt relieved. She was a little worried she'd have to help Lassa undress. It's not your fault. It was just a bad year, Freya said. Lassa could only nod, her eyes red and empty as she shut the door. After the dishes, Freya walked over to the front door. She picked up the rifle, trying to picture what it would feel like to fire it. Whew. What's gun oil made out of? What is gun oil made of? Mineral oil? Huh. The smell of mineral oil was in her nose. Freya felt a strange eagerness, almost as if she wished something would happen and she'd have an excuse. She pushed that thought away. Freya felt a strange eagerness, almost as if she wished something would happen and she'd have an excuse. She pushed the thought away. She didn't like it. She must look like an idiot pointing a gun at their front door. She brought it back to its place. She set the Seiko back in the corner, then peered out into the driveway, scanning the darkness for anything that didn't belong. If anything happened tonight, she was on her own. Her phone dinged in her pocket and she was startled, almost leaping with the unwelcome joke. Immediately she could envision the text, a single line from Malcolm that read, "I can see you." Freya flattened her back against the front door where she couldn't be seen from the outside. There was no one out there. She was scaring herself for nothing. Still, she had to take a deep breath before she could pull out her phone. The text was from Dan. It was a single purple heart. It was all she needed. Damn! What a chapter. So that's the big reveal right there. So chapter 82 is a big reveal. I remember the first time that the first writing of that chapter, there was so much scientific exposition happening there. So that is actually chapter 81 that they get to. So yeah, now it's all starting to get fucking for real. All of our threads are converging. So 81 is kind of like the nexus point for jumping off for the next. So we can really think of, this is the fourth and conclusive sort of saga of this book right here. Let's get to chapter 82. Okay, yeah, I like the I like a lot of what we're seeing from Lassa right there. 82, so I thought that this would be a good spot for a it felt like aphelion. So, holy shit, we made it all the way to chapter 641, which means that we're a day ahead of schedule. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I just made a new batch of coffee, which I'm going to go bottle. And yeah, we're fucking out here. So pretty happy with how this all went down. And yeah, thank you to everybody who, like, I enjoyed talking about the writing stuff. Keep in mind, like, if you ever need writing advice or to know how things work in publishing or whatever, feel free to message me and I will tell you what little I know. But yeah, like, I'm pretty happy with this. Being 10 pages ahead of schedule is like a first. Like this is the first time, only like a little bit ago did we really catch up with that goal of doing 10 pages a day, and we're starting to, like, we got through fucking 17 pages today. So that's really solid. We're getting stronger as we're editing, and I'm feeling more confident in the story. And I like, this is even with doing, so let's go back to our notes right here, because I do think this is a kind of a useful note to keep. So this is through 80, is where that goes to. And I'm going to take a look at our numbering too, because I feel like that might have gone, right? Wow, God, look at just like this fucking description is so long. All the things that we've had to do here. So 81, Freya reveals the star ball to Lassa. Cool. Oh. All right, that's a hard edit, but we did a good job. All right, so thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful fucking night. We're out here. What? Turn off, camera.